They called her the $3 girl, like it was a joke everyone was allowed to laugh at. Not because of something she did, because of a number on a crumpled tip. In a tiny roadside restaurant in Ohio, rich customers in polished cars would toss $3 lonely on the table and say, "That's enough for her." They'd smile at the owner, at Mr. Warren, like they were in on the same joke. And the 16-year-old orphan carrying those plates learned to keep her eyes down and her anger quiet, until one forgotten piece of paper slid out of a dusty ledger and proved that the real thief had been standing behind the counter all along. This is the story of a girl who spent years being paid in coins and humiliation. The girl nobody thought would ever question the way things were. One night, closing alone, she opens the old cash book and a yellowed receipt from 1978 tumbles to the floor. A big number, an insurance company name, and where it says seller, the surname of the grandparent she never met. From that moment on, she doesn't just carry plates. She carries a secret powerful enough to flip an entire town on its head. The next anniversary dinner, the restaurant fills with the same people who mocked her, dressed up, laughing, toasting tradition, with no idea that a single sheet of paper in her shaking hands is about to drag 40+ years of lies into the light. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? And be honest, and if you found a document that could ruin the person who humiliated you for years, would you use it? Hit like if you'd stay and fight, or drop A if you think you'd just walk away. And of course, if you enjoy stories like this, make sure you're subscribed and have the notifications on so you don't miss the next twist. Now let's go back to the beginning. To the girl the whole town thought was only worth $3. They only really looked at her hands. Hands to grab plates, hands to wipe spills, hands to pick up the tips they thought were generous. Her name was Lena, but inside Warren's diner she had another title, the $3 girl. Every weekend night, men in golf shirts and women with diamond bracelets would slide a few bills toward the edge of the table, chuckle and say, "That's enough for her. She doesn't need more." Mr. Warren would laugh along. "She's lucky to have a job," he'd say, loud enough for Lena to hear. The diner sat just off the highway, the kind of place truckers and locals both knew by heart. Old neon sign, vinyl booths, black and white photos of a smiling young Warren on the walls, all taken in that magical year everyone loved to repeat, 1978. "The year I built this place," he'd say, "from nothing." Lena knew something about nothing. She had grown up in group homes and short-term foster placements, carrying the same small duffel bag from house to house. People told her pieces of her story like they were reading the back of a cereal box. "There was a fire, honey. Your mum was very young. It was all very tragic. No one ever stayed long enough to fill in the details." So she learned not to ask. By 16, the diner was the closest thing she had to stability. She had a thin mattress in a rented room above a garage, a second-hand phone, and a walk to work that she knew by the cracks in the sidewalk. Mr. Warren reminded her constantly, "If you're late, there are 10 kids who'd take this job tomorrow." His 2 sons, older and cleaner, worked the front, chatting with customers, running the register, posting smiling photos on social media. Lena was the one who stayed late to scrub ketchup off the floor. She was the one who pretended not to hear when a customer asked, "Is she from one of those homes?" And Warren answered, "Yeah, but we're giving her a chance. We're the good guys here." She told herself it didn't matter. Money was money. A job was a job. But the nickname dug in. $3. That was what they thought her time, her tired feet, her careful balancing of plates, her forced smile were worth. $3 and maybe whatever was left over from the change jar. On the wall above the counter, a framed photo showed a much younger Warren, standing proudly in front of the diner with a pair of giant scissors, cutting a ribbon. Written in marker on the frame, "Grand Opening, 1978. Regulars would tap the glass and say, "That man built this town's favorite spot with his bare hands." Lena would glance at the smiling faces in the photo, at the crowd frozen behind him. Sometimes she wondered if somewhere in that blur of strangers there were people who shared her eyes, her jawline, her blood, people who'd eaten here long before anyone called her $3 girl. But then an order would shout from the kitchen, another drink would need refilling, and the thought would drift away. What she didn't know yet, what no one imagined, was that the proof of everything she'd never been told was waiting right there inside the building. Not in a photo, not in a memory, in a single sheet of paper that everyone else had forgotten existed. The night everything shifted didn't look special at first. Rain sliding down the windows. A slow Tuesday. The dinner rush had fizzled out early. A few truckers lingered over coffee, and a small group of regulars nursed slices of pie. Mr. Warren yawned and decided it wasn't worth staying. He slapped his keys on the counter and told Lena, "Close up, kid. Count the drawer, don't mess it up. You know the routine." Oh, she did know. She'd watched him do it 100 times. When the door swung shut behind him, the diner grew quiet in a way it almost never did. The hum of the fridge, the soft clink of plates in the back, the faint buzz of the neon outside spelling "open," even though the sign was about to flip. Lena cleared the last table, wiped down the counter, and brought the cash drawer to the tiny office in the back, a cramped room that smelled like coffee grounds and old paper. Stacks of binders lined the walls, years of ledgers, tax reports, and menus from long-gone promotions. She slid the drawer onto the desk and pulled out the current ledger. As she tugged at it, the binder next to it shifted, its metal rings not fully closed. There was a soft hiss of plastic, then a fluttering sound. Something thin and stiff slipped from between the pages and floated to the floor, landing face down near her shoe. Lena bent to pick it up, already half annoyed at herself for wasting time. It was a receipt, old, the paper yellow and brittle. The ink had faded to a dull brown, but the numbers were still visible. She squinted, reading the date. June 12th, 1978. The magical year from the photos. Her eyes moved down. There was a large amount listed under payment received, too large for a small diner in the middle of Ohio. At the top, the letterhead of an insurance company she didn't recognize. And then, halfway down the page, in a neat, looping script, a surname that froze her in place. Hastings. Lena's heart kicked hard. She had seen that name before. On the thin folder a social worker once let her hold for exactly 30 seconds, on a hospital bracelet kept in a plastic bag. Hastings, her mother's parents, the grandparents she'd never known. She looked again. Seller Arthur and Marjorie Hastings. Buyer Andrew Warren. Purpose, purchase of commercial property. Attached, a small note pinned to the corner. Funds drawn from settlement, house fire claim. The room shrank around her. For a moment she just listened to her own breathing loud in the quiet office. A house fire, a settlement, the grandparents whose house she'd been told didn't survive. Everyone said Warren had built the place from nothing. But here, in her hands, was proof that he had bought it, directly from the people whose blood ran in her veins, using money meant to rebuild their lives after tragedy. Lena's first instinct was to shove the paper back where it came from and pretend she'd never seen it. She had learned that in group homes. Sometimes questions made things worse, but her fingers wouldn't let go. She brought the receipt closer, tracing the ink as if touching the letters could make the past speak. Questions crashed in all at once. Had her grandparents wanted to sell? How much had they really received? Where did the rest of the settlement go? Did Warren know that the girl scrubbing his floors was connected to the people whose name was on this page? The clock on the wall ticked. The rain tapped the window. Somewhere out front, the neon sign kept buzzing "open" to an empty parking lot. Lena slipped the receipt into the pocket of her apron instead of putting it back. For the first time in a long time, she didn't hurry through her closing tasks. She moved slowly, methodically, her mind racing not with orders and refills, but with a single dangerous thought. Maybe I'm not the one who owes him. Maybe he's the one who owes me. Secrets don't stay secrets once you start asking the right questions. They just try to hide in different rooms. The next morning, Lena woke up before her alarm. The receipt lay flat on the small table beside her bed, carefully smoothed under a book to keep it from curling. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the names. Hastings. Warren. The year 1978 flashing like the diner's neon sign. On her way to school, she made a detour. Instead of heading straight down Main Street, she turned toward the county building, a squat brick place with metal detectors at the entrance and a bulletin board full of lost dog posters and public notices. Inside, she hesitated, feeling suddenly small in her thrift store jacket and scuffed sneakers. "Can I help you?" the clerk behind the glass asked, not unkindly, but bored. I'm looking for property records," Lena said. "From 1978. A sale involving a Hastings family and, "An Andrew Warren." The clerk raised an eyebrow. "You doing a school project?" "Yes," Lena lied, swallowing. "A local history project." That was all it took. An eye roll, a shrug, and a few minutes later, she was seated at a microfilm machine, the clerk showing her how to scroll through old scans. The town's history flickered past in negative. Weddings, zoning changes, business licenses. Finally, she found it. Transfer of property. Hastings, Arthur and Marjorie to Warren Andrew, June 1978. Next to it in another file, a brief article clipped from the local paper. Tragic fire claims couples' lives. It mentioned gas leaks, faulty wiring, a family devastated. At the bottom, a line Lena read 3 times. Survived by a daughter, 20 years old, current whereabouts unknown. Her mother? Lena's fingers trembled as she wrote down reference numbers. The article mentioned an insurance payout, managed, according to a small note, by family advisor and attorney Andrew Warren, the man who built the diner from nothing. It didn't say how much money changed hands. It didn't say why the Hastings house was never rebuilt, or why their daughter ended up in the system, but it was enough to draw the outline. Warren had been close enough to her grandparents to advise them, and close enough to walk away with their property. On her lunch break, instead of sitting with classmates who barely knew her name, Lena searched online from the school library. Insurance settlement 1978 Ohio, fraud cases 70s small town, Warren Diner history. It wasn't a movie. There was no single article neatly explaining everything. But piece by piece she saw patterns. People trusting the wrong advisor, settlements quietly shrinking between paperwork and signatures, families left with less than they should have had. That evening at the diner, she watched Mr. Warren with new eyes. The way he slapped customers on the back and called them buddy, the way he corrected her in front of everyone for the smallest mistake, the way his sons strutted through the dining room like they already owned the future. "Don't forget," he announced loudly that night, clinking a spoon against a glass. "Next month is the big one. 45 years of Warren's Diner. We're doing it big. Invitation-only dinner. The mayor, the bank, old customers, the works." The regulars cheered. 45 years of the best burgers in Ohio, someone called. Lena's hand went instinctively to the pocket, where the copy of the receipt now lived. She'd scanned it at school and printed a duplicate, leaving the original hidden under a loose board in her room. 45 years. He wanted a celebration, a stage, microphones, cameras for social media. All eyes on him. She could take the paper to the police, to a lawyer, to anyone, quietly. Maybe they'd investigate. Maybe they'd shrug, say it happened too long ago, say the people who deserved better were gone. Or she could wait. She could let Warren build his stage. Let him invite everyone who ever praised him. Let the whole town gather under the framed photos and clap for the man they thought had created everything. And then, she thought, feeling a strange calm settle over her, I can decide when to turn on the lights. Some battles aren't won in shouting matches. They're won in the silence before the first word. As the date of the anniversary dinner crept closer, the diner buzzed with a different kind of energy. Boxes of decorations arrived. A new banner was ordered, celebrating 45 years of Warren's Diner. Warren's sons argued over which local reporter to invite, which influencer could bring more eyes to the event. Lena moved around them like a shadow, refilling coffee, cleaning tables, listening. She heard guest lists being read out loud. The mayor, the bank manager who always tipped poorly, the retired fire chief, the old insurance agent who still played cards with Warren on Thursdays, all the people who had helped build his legend. On her one day off, Lena took the bus to the next town over, to a place she'd only ever passed by. A small legal aid office squeezed between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The sign out front promised free consultation in peeling letters. Inside, a woman in her 40s looked up from her laptop. "Can I help you?" Lena laid the copied receipt on the desk, hands tight. I just need to know if this means anything anymore," she said. "It's from 1978. That man is still alive. So is his diner. My grandparents aren't. But that house, that settlement, I think it's why my mother ended up where she did. Why I ended up where I did." The woman read quietly, then asked questions. How did Lena get the paper? Did anyone else know she had it? Did she have proof of the connection between herself and the Hastings name? Lena showed her the photocopy of the hospital bracelet, the social services letter with Hastings on it. The attorney didn't promise miracles. "It's complicated," she said honestly. "Time matters, paperwork matters, but this is not nothing, especially if he ever claimed he built the diner from scratch." "What happens if I go public?" Lena asked. The woman didn't tell her what to do. She only told her what to watch for. "He'll try to discredit you, offer you money to be quiet, say you're confused, that you're just a kid. If you choose to speak up, do it where people can't pretend they didn't hear." Walking back to the bus stop, Lena felt the wind sting her eyes. She wasn't sure if it was the cold or the fear. At the diner, preparations grew louder. A new sound system, a photographer booked for the night. The staff whispered about fancy hors d'oeuvres and a special dessert. Warren ordered new aprons for everyone, embroidered with "Warren's Diner" in cursive. When he handed Lena hers, he smirked. "Don't get this one dirty, kid. Big night, important people." She looked at the name stitched over her heart. Not hers, his. That night, alone in her room, she wrote on a sheet of notebook paper. Not a script exactly, but a list of truths she refused to let him talk over. Her grandparents' names, the fire, the settlement, the receipt, the way he'd told the town he'd built everything from nothing. In the silence, she practiced saying the words out loud, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Lena Hastings." It felt strange, like trying on a coat that actually fit after years of wearing borrowed clothes. The week of the event, she tucked the original receipt into an envelope and slipped it into the legal aid office's mail slot with a short note. "Keep this safe. If anything happens to me, show it to someone who will care." She kept the copy folded in her pocket, not just paper anymore, but a promise. When the night came and the restaurant filled with the people who'd always looked past her, she wouldn't just be the girl with the plates. She'd be the one holding the story they'd buried. Big nights don't announce themselves. They start like any other shift and until they don't. By 6 o'clock, the parking lot was already overflowing. Cars lined the street. Through the windows, Lena could see guests stepping out in suits, dresses, heels that clicked confidently on the pavement. Inside, the new banner glowed under warm lights. 45 years of Warren's Diner. Lena tied her apron slowly, fingers brushing against the folded copy of the receipt in her pocket. Her heart thudded, but her steps stayed steady as she moved through the dining room, placing baskets of rolls, refilling water, answering the same questions over and over. "Are you excited for Mr. Warren?" one regular asked, smiling wide. "He really deserves this." "He's worked so hard," another chimed in, patting Lena's arm as if she agreed. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The hum of conversation rose around her. At the back of the room, a small raised platform had been set up with a microphone. Warren's sons tested it, laughing, their voices booming through the speakers. 1, 2, 3. "Welcome, welcome." Finally, the last guests arrived. The mayor shaking hands, the bank manager clapping Warren on the shoulder, the retired fire chief taking a seat near the front. Cameras flashed as the photographer moved between tables, telling everyone to smile. Warren stepped onto the platform, adjusting his tie. "Can I have everyone's attention?" His voice cut through the clatter. The room slowly quieted, faces turning toward him with admiration. Lena paused near the counter, a tray balanced on one hand. The other slipped into her pocket, fingers closing around the worn edges of the copy. "For 45 years, Mr. Warren began, this diner has been my life. I built it from nothing. I gave this town a place to gather, to celebrate, to feel like family." The words hit Lena differently now. "Built it from nothing, family," he went on, weaving the story he'd told 100 times. "Back in 1978, all I had was a dream and a little bit of luck. No big investors, no inheritance, just hard work." At the word inheritance, something inside Lena clicked into place. Her pulse steadied. The fear that had been buzzing in her veins settled into a clear, hard line of resolve. When the applause started, loud, enthusiastic, admiring, she took a step forward, then another. She moved around the counter, not with a tray, but with the folded paper in her hand. "Excuse me," she said, her voice not quite loud enough. No one heard. She climbed onto the small step behind the counter, where Warren usually stood to ring a bell and joke with the crowd. The photographer lowered his camera, surprised. "Excuse me," Lena tried again, louder. This time a few heads turned, her chest tightened, but she didn't look away. "Mr. Warren," she called, "before you keep talking about 1978, There's something the town should see." The room rippled with whispers. Warren frowned, annoyed. "Lena, what are you doing? This isn't—" She unfolded the paper with both hands, holding it up so the lights caught the faded ink. "This is a receipt," she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "Dated June 12, 1978. It shows that this property, this diner, was bought from Arthur and Marjorie Hastings, with money from a house fire settlement." The retired fire chief jerked in his seat. "Hastings?" he repeated under his breath. "In every story you tell," Lena continued, "you say you built this place from nothing. But right here it says you were their advisor, their attorney. It says you took their settlement after they lost everything, their house, their lives." She swallowed. "They were my grandparents." A rustle of shock went through the crowd. Some guests leaned forward. Others glanced at Warren, expecting him to laugh it off. His face had gone pale. "That paper is old," he said quickly, forced chuckle in his voice. "You don't know what you're talking about, kid. You don't understand how business works." From a corner table, an elderly man slowly pushed himself to his feet, using his cane for support. His voice shook, but it carried. "I signed that paper," he said. "I was Arthur's friend. We begged you to help them, Andrew. You said the settlement wasn't enough to rebuild, that selling the land was the only choice. You promised you'd look after their daughter." He looked at Lena, eyes wet. She was about this girl's age. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Only the faint buzz of the lights remained. Cameras that had been pointed at Warren's smiling face now swung toward Lena and the old man. Someone near the back started recording on their phone. Lena took a breath. "You told this town you did it all on your own," she said softly. "But you were standing on the ashes of someone else's life, on the money meant to make sure their family wasn't left with nothing." Warren opened his mouth, closed it again. The practiced words, the comfortable story refused to come. For the first time in decades, he had nothing rehearsed to fall back on. And the $3 girl standing above the counter no longer looked like part of the background. She looked like the one person in the room willing to say out loud what everyone was suddenly afraid might be true. Public truth is messy. It doesn't end when the room falls silent, it starts there. After the old man spoke, voices rose all at once. Questions, accusations, half-remembered rumors. Someone asked, "Is that legal?" Another, "Did you really take their settlement?" Warren's sons tried to step in front of him, to speak for him, but their words tangled in the chaos. The mayor cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Maybe we should all calm down," he suggested weakly. "Let Mr. Warren explain." But the mood had shifted. People who'd known him for decades were looking at him differently now, not as a hero of hard work, but as someone who might have built his success on someone else's loss. Warren finally managed to push his way off the platform. "Lena," he hissed, grabbing her elbow as she stepped down from the counter. "Office, now." She let him pull her into the cramped back room, the door slamming behind them. The noise from the dining room became a muffled roar. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, voice low and dangerous now, the friendly public tone gone. "You have no idea what that paper means. You don't know the details. You're an ungrateful kid who I took pity on, and this is how you repay me?" Lena pulled her arm free. The fear was still there, but it sat beside something larger now, a sense that for once she wasn't the only one who had something to lose. "I know enough," she said. "I know you were supposed to protect them. I know they died. I know their daughter ended up in the system. And I know you told the town you built this place from zero when you didn't." He paced, chewing on his lip. "Listen," he said finally, shifting into a different tone, smoother, almost soothing. "We can fix this. I can write you a check, a big one. You like numbers? I can make sure you never have to serve another table again. You just go out there, say you misunderstood, say you're confused about your paperwork, emotional, you know, because of your background." For a second, the temptation flashed across her mind. To walk away with hush money, a quick exit, no more late nights and $3 tips. But she'd seen too many temporary solutions in her life. Places that promised forever and lasted 6 months. Adults who said they'd stay and then vanished. Money that solved nothing beneath the surface. "I don't want your private apology," she said quietly. "I don't want your secret check." "Then what do you want?" he snapped. "You want to ruin me? You want to shut this place down, put everyone out of a job?" Lena thought of the cooks in the back. The dishwasher who had slipped her extra fries on bad days. The waitress who had fixed her uniform when it tore. She didn't want them to lose what little stability they had because of what he'd done 45 years ago. "I want the truth to be visible," she answered, "every day for everyone." He scoffed. "That's not a legal request." "No," she said, "but it's a real one." Over the next days, not in one dramatic scene but in a series of hard, exhausting conversations, Lena sat at the legal aid office across from people who finally had to look at the paper, the records, the timeline. Lawyers explained what could and couldn't be undone after so many years. Some doors were closed. Laws had limits. The dead didn't come back. But not everything was untouchable. Warren's carefully crafted story, for one. His sign, his brand, his claim that he had built it alone. Those things, the attorneys said, had never been protected by time. When Warren realized she wasn't bluffing, that she had given the original receipt to someone who could use it, that she had witnesses, that the town had already heard the questions out loud, his offers changed. Less condescending, more desperate. He talked about partnerships, about including her name somewhere. Lena listened. Then she made her own offer. "The diner keeps its doors open," she said. "No one on staff loses their job, but the sign out front changes. The name changes. It stops being Warren's Diner. It becomes Hastings Family Diner. My grandparents' name goes on the building you bought with their settlement. Their picture goes on the wall where yours is now." "And me?" he asked, almost choking on the word. "You stay," she said, meeting his eyes. "You and your sons. You keep working here as employees, not owners. Every extra dollar this place makes for the next years goes into a fund, for the families who trusted you back then, for scholarships in my grandparents' names, for kids like me who were left with nothing." He called it cruel. He called it theatrical. He called it vengeful. Maybe it was, but it wasn't just revenge. It was a kind of living sentence. Every day he would have to walk under a sign that reminded him whose life he'd stepped over. Every shift he worked, he'd feel the weight of the name he'd erased now lit up in bright letters. In the end, faced with the choice between public legal battles and public restitution, he signed. The first time Lena saw Hastings Family Diner lit up against the night sky, her hands shook almost as much as they had the night she found the receipt. People still came for burgers and pie. They still told stories. But the legend changed. When new customers asked about the name, someone would nod toward the young woman behind the counter, the one who used to be the $3 girl, and say, "It's her family's place, it always should have been." In the end, the most expensive thing in that diner wasn't the steak or the new sound system, or even the neon sign. It was one piece of paper someone thought would never matter again. A receipt that outlived the lies told around it. Lena didn't walk away with a lottery-sized check or a perfect, shiny version of justice. Her grandparents were still gone. Her mother's story still had gaps. Some people in town defended Warren for a long time, insisting he meant well or that it was just business back then. Real life rarely ties itself up with a bow. But the balance shifted. The place where she'd been mocked for being worth $3 became a building that carried their name, not his. The man who used to stand in front of a framed photo of himself now had to clock in under a sign that reminded him of the people who should have been there first. And the girl who once stared at the floor when customers laughed learned to stand on a step, raise her voice, and refuse to be the quiet part of someone else's legend. Maybe that's the most unsettling part of this story. How many other $3 kids are out there, carrying trays, sweeping floors, keeping their heads down, while the real stories of their families sit hidden in some dusty back room, waiting to be found. If you were in Lena's place, what would you have done with that receipt? Would you have taken the hush money and run, or would you have stayed to rewrite the sign above the door? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know how you see it. And if this story kept you listening all the way here, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next tale. Somewhere out there, another quiet kid is about to find the one piece of truth that changes everything. And when they do, we'll be here to tell you what happened next.